Our wonderful living Father who art in heaven, Lord, you're an awesome God. We come to give you praise and recognize that you are Lord of our lives, who are leading us, who are guiding us and giving us understanding. Thank you, Lord, for the teachers that you have brought before us. And we ask that you will continue to open up our minds and give us greater understanding, enlighten us. Not only with the precious truth of your word that it can be instilled in our hearts to learn, to be in our minds, but also the bravery, the courage to go out and to do the battle, to have confidence not in ourselves, but in our God, who will give us wisdom and the words to speak at the right time, that we may have that confidence to go and to battle with whomever you send us to. So thank you, Lord, for this time together as we fellowship, as we come together and to learn and to encourage one another. In Yeshua's wonderful name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And just to encourage everyone again there are still openings on the teaching schedule that I sent out. I got to fill in a couple of spots that I know that need to be updated, but there's still, February is all taken, I think. March might still have a couple of spots. And then we need spots to fill in April and then May. And the sooner you get yourselves on the schedule, the more time you have to prepare and plan your presentation. So if you've not done one yet, hey, it's a good time to think in advance, and it might just push you a little bit more to get prepared. Because like we were talking earlier, we need this experience with one another to be to sharpen our sword, to go out there to help others.
So the ones presenting in April, are those just for the month of April as well as for rescue?
Say that again?
So those,
we have rescue, and then we have all our regular weekly stuff.
Right. So you need teachers for rescue and for regular weekly stuff?
I'm pretty sure I don't have rescue all the way full. I don't think I have rescue all the way full yet.
Have you heard anything from Arkansas?
No, I'm gonna wait on that, but yeah, I want to hear on that too. So, okay, can you guys see this? You can see the screen, right? The notes?
Mm-hmm. Does she know?
I was gonna ask. Yeah, I'll ask her. Okay, let's turn this on.
So there will be no communion service in April.
No communion service in April?
Yeah, right.
If Elder Shaquetta is coming, there should be. She's might not teach, but if she comes there, which I thought she would.
Is she planning to come?
I don't know yet.
Yeah, we need to know so we could get the communion stuff, but
Okay.
I don't know why she couldn't.
That's interesting.
So we're gonna go into
You have to have the ordained elder to do that.
Heraclea. I didn't know we couldn't do it without an elder. I knew there were certain things we couldn't do, but I didn't know that was one of them.
But we can't.
Well,
do it
I think
without
Elder-
somebody that's anointed.
I think Elder Shaquetta was there because of the baptisms.
Yeah,
Also for communion service or just baptisms?
I don't know. For baptisms, I didn't know about.
Yeah.
I didn't know about.
And
that.
everyone's baptized. We don't need any more.
There might be some more, but I'm not sure. So
That line.
Oh, they lost internet.
Jackie lost internet. Are you with us now, Jackie? She must be with us now if she typed that in.
Yes, my internet is having some problems here, so
Okay.
I hear you all right. I didn't know if it was my end or yours, but I realized it was mine, so.
Okay. What we're gonna go through Heraclea.
Yes.
Sister Anna says she's studying baptism.
Who?
Sister Anna.
Oh. Anna, did I send you the?
She says she's studying for it now.
I did send you the information. Oh, I sent you the link, or I told you where to go on the website. Okay, I think that was the case. So, okay, so, and we don't know when that's going to happen again yet anyways, but keep studying and preparing anyway that is wanting, it hasn't been. Okay, so going into Heraclea, this is number 10 of the Guadalupe camp meetings. And I'm kind of considering, but I would need help in this, taking some of these presentations and us making a booklet out of them. What we do with it later, I'm not real sure, but whether we give them out or donations or what have you, I don't want to talk about that part of it, but I'm thinking about having some of it put into a booklet. And
This works.
yeah, like I was thinking about the midnight crime message for one, and this would be a good one because it's a little bit more condensed.
How much do you think it's gonna be?
Oh, I don't know about, we can talk about that later, but I was thinking of adding into it the World War II stuff as well,
But you know,
because it would be World War I. Yes, thank you.
you remember what you did for rescue?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking to do.
Yeah. That was-
Because, you know, look at the Millerites when they had 300 preachers and they made 300 charts and they went out and gave the same message. So it was harmony, right?
Yeah,
They gave the
yes,
same
we
message.
need something.
Yeah. So,
I'll give him money.
okay. So, but the help that I would need I wasn't asking for that kind of help. Well, the help that I would need is proofreading, because it takes
So does
time.
my mom needs that same help.
It takes
know.
time to proofread, and there's a lot of documents. And
Yeah.
so keep that in mind, that I would love any kind of volunteer help, and we'll have to figure out how to get you the files because they're in Publisher to be edited. And so you would need Publisher to be able to, for me to be able to send them to you and be able to edit, because it would really be better if they were edited. And
You
so,
can ask Sister Tamina too. She probably has people on her
Okay.
team. Yeah.
so,
Does she? Because
Elaine?
she asked for the same kind of
I
help.
know, but obviously, but
yeah,
she.
somebody was gonna say something?
When are you gonna start
Just
doing this?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, so editing as far as commas, capitals, things like that, you mean?
yeah, spelling, all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Sentences and stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
When are you gonna start doing that?
what'd you say?
When are you gonna start doing that?
I could do it whenever, because I know I was going to call upon you as well, but I didn't want to lay it all on you. That's why I thought I'd put it out there. Because at least for Guadalupe, it's going to be 15 presentations just for Guadalupe. I was thinking maybe what we can wind up doing is merging some of Guadalupe with Brazil, just because I did not get the early classes of Brazil all I did was board work in the beginning. So this time around, we have it was more condensed, but it's more the old transcribing of the notes for Acts 27, where it all begins. So yeah, it would be great if we together all tried to find ways to, if everybody was able to take a couple, but I know not everybody has Publisher, so. But then we could put it together in a book, and it would help us to have the whole Midnight Crime message. And like I said, then add in I'm working on one of the World War I presentations, because then that can go in there as well.
So regarding the publisher, we would love to help, but we don't have Publisher. So how do you get Publisher?
Oh, we can talk about that later too. We'll do that.
Okay.
I didn't mean to go that far into it, so we'll talk about that later then. Maybe on Wednesday night. And
Okay.
we can start working on that. Okay, so on to Heraclea then. Thank you guys for the interest, because it would be good to have it as a booklet for us.
Have what?
Midnight Crime message as a booklet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I transcribe?
You already do that. You
But I do it on this. I'd like to do what else you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, they're already there. After you transcribe them, then I put them together like this. And there's more corrections made in the PowerPoint
Hold on.
slides.
Allie, she's saying that these Guadalupe messages are what she's talking about being a booklet and needing help with.
Oh, okay. I can't do that part. I like transcribe.
Yeah.
So you are actually part of it, because
Yeah.
you transcribed all
Yeah.
of these these notes already.
And it's been extremely helpful.
And Henry, he helped too.
Yes, been extremely helpful, and now I have a week off, and I'm going to work on Kenya's World War I, and that would be good to merge in with this. So, okay. So we're going to start with a review of Pyrrhus, and where we saw the 4 battles of Ipsus, Heraclea, Asculum, and Beneventum. We want to refresh our memories of the history of Pyrrhus and World War II, and the 2 fronts of World War II, the Western and the Eastern Front. So we laid out our lines of 4 battles, and we described this common theme that in each battle, you're going to find the same mode of warfare. It's elephants. And they're not just a component of those battles, that they're the deciding factor. So you have the line of Pyrrhus here with Ipsus, Heraclea, Asculum, and Beneventum lined up with World War II, war on the Western Front and war on the Eastern Front, and knowing that these battles were all decided by elephants. And like she says, not just a factor in there, but the battles were decided by elephants. And the elephants represent, in each one of them was the same mode of warfare. It represents a new mode of warfare to have the elephants, giving us in our line that we would have a new mode of warfare. So in our previous studies, we looked at 2014 and 2016. 2016 is the Battle of Ipsus and the invasion of Poland. We considered it from both the history of World War II and Pyrrhus. In fact, we looked at this waymark to 2016 from 3 perspectives. The Battle of Ipsus, we looked at 3 perspectives: the history of Pyrrhus, the history of Seleucus and Ptolemy, and the history of World War II. So if you remember that Seleucus and Ptolemy, that goes to the very beginning of the battles of the King of the North, the King of the South, the first Seleucus and the first Ptolemy. And then the battle of Ipsus from the line of the history of Pyrrhus, showing Antigonus and Demetrius, with Pyrrhus supporting Demetrius against the 3 allies. So, so we went through the 3 different histories to break down the 2016 election, and they're all telling the same story, adding the different details into the picture. And all 3 begin with an alliance. So each, the Pyrrhus, the Battle of Ipsus, and World War II, and then also the Ptolemy and Seleucus, they begin with an alliance, whether it's Demetrius and Pyrrhus, Seleucus, Ptolemy, or Hitler and Stalin. And they all tell the story at 2016 that there is an alliance between the King of the North and the King of the South. So beginning with Pyrrhus and Demetrius, which was one of the main histories we discussed, we saw Antigonus and Demetrius fighting a common enemy. Seleucus, Cassander, and Lysimachus, the 3 allies. Then we see Antigonus's name means to be like or compared to the ancestor, and going into this battle with 1 eye, he'd already suffered the loss of 1 eye in a previous battle. So if we understood that Antigonus is like the ancestor, that ancestor in the history in Daniel is Alexander the Great, who established that empire and built up Greece. So Antigonus is like the ancestor. He is still trying to maintain and build and keep the kingdom united. So we can connect Alexander and Antigonus, which is exactly what Daniel does in these 4, skipping the 4 Diadochi Wars. We saw that Clinton and Trump are represented by Antigonus and Demetrius. We have that Clinton here as Antigonus and Demetrius as Trump. One represents the empire builder, that would be Antigonus or Clinton, and those who founded the Constitution. And one represents Demeter, harvest, that's the meaning of Demetrius, Demeter or harvest, and is going to bring the USA to a harvest time period. They're not fighting each other. Clinton and Trump are not fighting each other, but for control of the common enemy, Seleucus, Cassander, and Lysimachus, or the 3 branches of the American government, the executive, judicial, and legislative. And that's, we know, as war on the Western Front. Antigonus goes into this battle with 1 eye. So Antigonus has already lost 1 eye. We discussed that, how it parallels with the Millerite history, with the Protestants rejecting the message and the Protestant horn broken. So Antigonus, or the establishment, or the founders, they come to this battle with 1 horn already broken. The lamb-like beast went into this battle with 1 horn, and you see that the Republican horn is broken. If you go to World War II again, you have 3 allies. So we see that both horns are broken here, is what we're showing. If you go to World War II again, you have 3 allies. Poland, France, and Britain. We see Poland was taken at once, and there is a long war with the other two allies, France and Britain. So we see the executive branch was taken at once at the 2016 election. Here you have the executive branch taken, just like you had Poland taken at once, and then there's a long drawn out war, the rest of the war to get the judicial and the legislative. So the executive branch is the presidency, which Trump took at the election of 2016. And now if you follow the politics inside the United States, there's an ongoing war with the other two branches, the judicial and the legislative branches, because Trump wants to control all three branches. And that was one perspective. We can see it also from another. So I put a little note here because this was done back in April, I think it was, of 2019. And I put this here, don't know if it's completely final, that Barr, the strife between him and Barr that's taking place, you know, has me looking a little more closely and watching what is happening. But so I don't know if we can quite say that Trump has control of the judicial branch all the way, or if there's something else that's going on, if it's hidden behind the scenes, or like I think Jonathan said, that it might be just kind of show what they're doing publicly, if that's the way to paraphrase that.
It's the influence now between Barr and Trump. And
Right.
Trump is controlling it through his tweets,
Right.
and he has a lot of influence through that.
Yes. His base loves that he can do whatever he wants. Everybody dreams about being able to do whatever they want. And they just love standing behind someone who wants to do whatever he wants, because that's what we all want to have, the right to do whatever we want. And I've always believed that, yeah, God did give us freedom to do whatever we want, but with freedom comes responsibility.
Amen. And do you want to expand on that thought? What do you mean when
So with freedom comes
Yeah,
responsibility.
Mhm.
Well, because you can have the freedom to do whatever you want, but if whatever you want hurts other people, causes pain to other people, or suffering to other people, then
Yeah, you have to consider the freedom of everybody else.
yeah.
Amen. I think about the heavenly angels because they are living in true freedom.
Uh-huh.
And how do they behave? You know, like in their hearts, they're not seeking to hurt people.
Right.
And you wonder where that comes from, you know, because all of us here know, I mean, we're learning about freedom, right? But
Mhm.
what's in us to even do good, you know?
Mhm.
In spite of knowing that we do have the freedom to do whatever, we do have the freedom to be selfish,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because heavenly angels are altruistic, or they're, you know, self-sacrificing. So they're seeking others above themselves, you know? And so if that's not in the heart, then, and we are free to do as we please, then
Our actions are going to be guided by the motives that are in our heart.
right.
And that's why we want that
So we
new
have
heart.
need
We
the
want a
right
clean
motive.
heart.
Yeah, we have that, always have that right motive in
Mhm.
what we do.
And why we need a new heart, a changed heart, a cleansed heart, a pure heart, a heart of flesh
Mhm.
that loves others as he loves them. And that would cause us to be self-sacrificing,
That it would be,
selfless instead of selfish.
that it will be habitual, you know,
Right.
that we're not even, that it wouldn't even think, the thought wouldn't even come
It's
into
just
our
your
mind.
action. It's
Exactly.
automatic
yeah,
action.
yeah. When it,
Well,
the
yeah,
thought-
you did that in the studies when
Yeah.
it comes to how your thoughts turn
Yeah.
into, and then
Yeah.
eventually become actions. So,
yeah, that.
so it starts from what's in the heart, and so what comes out of the mouth is what's in the heart. So, so Daniel takes the death of Alexander and skips the 4 Diadochi Wars. These are the Diadochi Wars, which he sees as noise, and goes from the cause, Alexander's death, to the effect, the breaking of one horn, the rising up of the 4 generals, and the breaking of the death of Antigonus. This takes us from 323 BC to Ipsus, from cause to effect. So he skips these Diadochi Wars and just considers Alexander and Antigonus as one. So with the death of Alexander and the final death being here with Antigonus, who is like the ancestor, come the 4 generals at the Battle of Ipsus.
You know, Trump also represents Esther, apparently.
Esther? Yeah.
Wait, say that again. What?
You know, the Iran problems that you see with him trying to destroy Iran. I was watching a video yesterday that was like the Cyrus prophecy is one, but the Esther prophecy, that Esther was put in that place at such a time as this to free God's people. So they're looking at Trump as if he's Esther because he's there to free and to give Israel their land back. So Iran is their number one enemy because Iran backs the Palestinians, the Hamas, who's fighting Israelis and trying to, keep Palestine. But all the evangelicals, so there's two main powers, the Arabic Muslim, whatever their religion is, and then the Israelis over there in that whole Syria area. And now there's a third group of prominence, which apparently white evangelicals are going to Israel like it's the new hottest vacation spot.
Well, no, that's been going on ever since. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
everybody has been wanting to go to Jerusalem, the holy city.
yeah, but it's more now because they're wanting them to get Palestine, because they're saying it's going to fulfill that revelation. Then when God's people are back in their, take their city, then Jesus is going to come. So they're thinking Trump is going to help fulfill the prophecy and bring the second coming of
Right.
Jesus.
That's so interesting how Satan.
Well, he's going to bring the second coming of Jesus, all right?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Just not quite the way he pictured it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day. We're not born into this world with desires to fulfill the role of Antichrist or to fulfill the role such as that. It's like, what brings a person to such a place in their life? It's really sad when you really think about it.
It's not, anytime you indulge self and want to lift up self, you're doing the work of Antichrist.
Yep.
So
Some people are evil.
Yeah. So we're doing the same thing in the perspective of Raphia, talking about skipping over the Diadochi Wars and calling them noise. Because when we talk about Raphia as a battle between the king of the north and the king of the south, Ptolemy and Seleucus, and for a few years, we've made Raphia the close of probation and placed it as waymark. We want to know why they are fighting. So why are Ptolemy and Seleucus fighting? Why are they fighting at Raphia? Because we saw that here they're in an alliance, right? So why are they fighting here? And if we use the same model that Daniel gives us, we can go to the beginning of the wars and find the cause and see Raphia is the effect. So we see here this alliance here, and this battle here is the cause, and Raphia is the effect. Instead of skipping 4 Diadochi Wars, now we are passing over the 4 Syrian Wars, and we're identifying them as noise. And Ipsus is the cause, Raphia is the effect. Ipsus is 2016, and Ptolemy and Seleucus are allies. So Adriana can probably help me with this then. So we have Ipsus is 301, and I see on your board back there, you've got the different verses that are these verses in here that are these Syrian wars.
Mm-hmm.
And those are those actual verses that come from verse 5 on to 15, correct?
But, yeah, they don't match the Syrian wars.
They don't match the Syrian wars, really?
Yeah, because the Syrian wars were categorized by external historians, but Uriah Smith in the Bible categorizes it by the events that it thinks it's important. So you have, what is it? So
Unless you put your camera on it, they can't see it. I need to stop. We're going to stop shooting this in here.
Zoom is unable to detect. Okay. It's gonna give me problems.
Maybe she's not going to do her camera.
No, so I'll just say it out loud. Syrian War number 1 is 274 to 271, and that's verse 5a, and then the first part of verse 5, and then you have War number 2 from 260 to 253. That's the second part of verse 5 plus verse 6. Then you have War 3 from this time period, that's verse 7 to 9, that's that whole time period. And there's extra parts in that war that aren't mentioned in the verses too. It was a headache trying to figure that out the night that, because my mom was struggling with it too, and I'm like, well, let me take a look at this and see what it's actually about. And I was like, whoa, these don't match at all. War number 4, Syrian War number 4 is verses 10 plus 11 to 12, so 10 to 12. War 5 is 13 to 15. War 6 is an elimination. So,
So
I
the
can write that
Syrian-
down and put it somewhere.
So if you're looking at Daniel, Uriah Smith's book, Daniel and the Revelation, and you're looking in that chapter, you're going to see a different account than these 6 Syrian wars. Is what
Yeah.
you're saying.
God categorized it in what's important that he wanted his people to look at.
The point that they
Yeah.
needed to see.
Yeah, and it
Kind of like
wasn't
cherry-pick.
exactly. Yeah,
So they are they
No.
a part of the Syrian wars?
yeah.
They're a part of
They're
the Syrian
events
wars.
within the Syrian wars.
Okay,
Yeah.
events within the Syrian wars, but they're
Someone-
cherry picked.
Someone's trying to
Yeah,
say something.
Sister Holly.
Hi. You speak like a whirlwind, for crying out loud. Both of you. So anyways, that just went totally over my head.
She's gonna
Please
type
write
it up.
that down.
Yeah, she said she's gonna type it up.
And can I ask again, so the verses is Daniel 11 and those verses, is that what you're talking about?
Correct, because
Yeah.
you got the six Syrian wars that we're calling noise. These are the 6 Syrian wars. We call them noise, but they're actually
Yeah.
the verses between Daniel 11:5 to 15 are events that transpired within the Syrian wars, but not the Syrian wars themselves, if I said that correctly.
Yep.
So these verses in between here, from 5 to 15, and he doesn't even do cover Syrian war number 6. So these Syrian wars, he cherry-picked, Daniel cherry-picked events that God wanted us to know. So when you go to Daniel and the Revelation, these events in these verses are events of these Syrian wars. Did that make sense?
What it does, but what chapter of Daniel and Revelation?
In chapter 11, you just go into that chapter and go to those verses.
Oh, yeah. That,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about the-
okay, got it.
Yeah. So it really helps me more and more, one thing at a time, and I'm slow, is to get to continue to build my perspective of the events, because the right perspective gives us the right parable. You know what I mean? The right parable to look at to be able to see the events today.
It's nice to have an idea of what all is happening. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like the whole thing with Macedonia, Italy, but also the Fourth Diadochi War, understand where those battles are coming from is important, and it helps you actually understand what's going on and what's talking about. And you don't get it all at once. That's why in school they keep repeating the same subjects over many years until you get more and more little bits of it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
And it's building a picture in your own mind that is going to help you to be able to, as you got this, how many of us have in our past watched a movie and we're able to go retell the movie.
Yeah.
God's giving us all the movie of the important events that we can go tell the movie, and the right events are going to help us to line up and see the application in our history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that through school they repeat. It was so funny. When one of our professors in college said that you learned all this stuff in elementary school, and now or high school, and now we're gonna you got to throw all that away, and we're gonna teach you all this the real stuff or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
So
It's not that you throw it away, it's that you get a simple model that's easy to understand, but the model changes and gets more complex, and you're expected to be able to grow with that, which is everything we do.
which is us
Yeah.
gathering up these wheels within wheels
Yeah.
until pretty soon they play in perfect harmony in our mind.
yeah.
So let's see. So let's see what Daniel gives us. We can go to, and if we use the same model that Daniel gives us, we can go to the beginning of the wars. We can find the causes, see the cause, and see Rapha as the effect. Instead of skipping 4 Diadochi wars, where he skipped 4 Diadochi wars, that we're passing over these Syrian wars, and we're identifying them as noise, and Ipsis is the cause, and Rapha is the effect. And Ipsis is 2016, and Ptolemy and Seleucus are allies. So you have the same dynamic in this second perspective with Seleucus against Antigonus. Seleucus is the king of the north, and Antigonus is the same person standing in place of Alexander the Great. So you have Clinton against Trump, who has already since 2014 been identified as the king of the north. Then you have the king of the south, Ptolemy, giving his support to Trump. So I think it's something to note that I'm finally trying to, maybe you guys got it a long time before I did, but who is Seleucus? Because Seleucus is demonstrated through the studies on World War I and the Third Diadochi War. And then Seleucus comes back at the end. And that's where you come to where you have the death of Antigonus, and then you have the Babylonian Wars, correct? Is Seleucus die? Does Antigonus die before the Babylonian Wars, or is that the Babylonian Wars? It's those two, right? Isn't it Antigonus and Seleucus in the Babylonian Wars?
Yeah, and Antigonus is after. The Babylonian War happens between Diadochi War 3 and 4.
Okay, go ahead, Brother Phil.
Okay, so I have a question on the very last sentence. Then you have the king of the south, Ptolemy, giving his support to Trump. So,
Ptolemy giving support to Seleucus.
so is that Ptolemy? Is that supposed to be Putin? Or does Ptolemy's
Yes,
Yeah, Putin.
Putin?
Where
So is
they're in,
Putin's giving us, right, so is Putin's giving his support to Trump?
yeah, the
Okay.
king of the south giving his support to Trump. It's important to note, though, that Seleucus, because that's what I'm trying to finally wrap my head around, is the application, it being and showing that Seleucus comes back in the Babylonian Wars, and that's in, correct me, I lost my train of thought again. So that's where Antigonus dies at Ipsus, right?
yeah.
And so the Babylonian Wars are right before that, leading up to Ipsus. Okay.
Leading up to the Fourth Diadochi War. The Battle of Ipsus, I think, is the end of the Fourth Diadochi War.
Okay.
It's like the final battle.
Okay.
So
It's good to know because, go ahead.
So it's right here. So Diadochi War 3, Diadochi War 4, in here is the Babylonian War, and Ipsus is here.
Okay. It's interesting because what we were talking about earlier before we actually logged on this morning is if anybody's watched the presentation that she does on the first angel and the counterfeit. Is that what the title of it was? The first angel and the counterfeit? Or the first angel of the counterfeit? Because externally, what we're learning the difference between the Protestants and the Catholic Church, the papacy. And so externally, there's a battle that's going to ensue, which I think that would be, because that's between Antigonus and Seleucus, right? Correct me if I'm wrong when I say this. So, so you've got this external, you're going to have this external battle. The king of the south is going to be put out of the way, but you're going to have this external battle between two king of the north. So this is probably a wrong way to say it, or an oxymoron, but you're going to have a true counterfeit, and you're going to have whatever the other counterfeit is. So you've got Protestants versus the papacy on the external line, vying to be the true counterfeit king of the north. And we know who wins because the papacy goes into the Sunday law, and that's got to be wrapped somewhere into the 10 kings, but that'll come later. But then you have internally, on the internal line within, you have FFA and the movement, and the battle to be the true king of the north. But what it's going to culminate in the Sunday law period, and this is why, anyway, so it's going to culminate at the Sunday law period, where you're going to have the counterfeit and the true king of the north go head to head. Did that make sense?
I just posted it in SAC Fellowship group on WhatsApp if you guys want to look at it, the little diagram. From my studies, this is what I found. If it's a little different, then, fix it. But
so we're headed to this ultimate showdown of Christ and Satan, the papacy and the movement, the two king of the north. But internally and externally, you have two factions vying to be the winner. Externally, you have the Protestants and the Catholic Church, and so that's when Seleucus comes back in the World War I study, and kills, and then Antigonus dies after that. So, did that make sense?
You mentioned that the papacy goes into the Sunday law. What do you mean by that? Like they come before?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that discussion we had a while back, and you threw me through a loop on one part because I still have, I don't have, there's a lot of things I don't have understood, but that verse 14, Daniel 11:14, where it says that, where Rome comes on the scene, and that apparently is before Panium, but we know that they don't come until after Panium. But we also have the line of Pyrrhus, and the line of Pyrrhus shows us that Rome sends ambassadors to Egypt, which that's where I'm kind of starting to believe that that's where we're headed into an understanding of what's going to happen with the 10 kings and the fall of the United States, because those 10 kings give their power 1 hour to the beast. So the Rome sends ambassadors to Egypt in between Panium and Sunday Law, and then Egypt sends ambassadors to Rome.
How do you know that it's between Panium and Sunday Law?
Well, looking at the line of Pyrrhus.
Pardon me?
Looking at the line of Pyrrhus from Tess, in the line of Pyrrhus. Remember when I can't remember what study that was, but it was in the study of Pyrrhus. You go back to the notes of Pyrrhus, and you'll see that that when Rome is coming on the scene with all the wars with Pyrrhus, his Italy war battles, right? His wars in Italy, where Rome is just this little insignificant place, but it winds up coming on the scene, and they become known. And it's written in history. I don't remember the books because we quoted those books.
Because
it's written in history because of this.
Because they won the Battle of Beneventum, then Egypt is forced to recognize them as coming on the scene, which is the Battle of Panium.
So what does coming on the scene look like? They're still not significant before Sunday Law, are they?
They are growing. So do you remember how Tess has those lines of increasing and decreasing?
Yeah.
So they start increasing because Panium.
Yeah, they start increasing at Panium, right? And then Sunday Law is where they.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Exactly.
Is that's just where I was confused, because the U.S. goes through to Sunday Law, right? And they're increasing. Well, they're decreasing and increasing depending which way you look at it.
Yeah, they're decreasing, and then you're going to transition to the 10 kings and the version of the UN, whatever that's going to look like.
So do we still look at that as Trump over the UN, like Trump and the US over the UN? That's still,
as far as I've never heard that change.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, because I was really thinking about it, because if you've got the oxymoron of the true counterfeit is going to be liberalism is going to win, right?
After
and so that's what we go head to head with, is their liberation theology. So that must have something to do with doing something to the Protestants.
Yeah,
I was kind of thinking that this morning. It must have something to do with what it does to the Protestants. But
I figured the transition must come after the Sunday Law, because like the conservative and Trump, or however you want to lump it all together, they kind of rise and make it to the Sunday Law. But then that liberalism, which is going to come through the papacy, is going to come post Sunday Law, because it's the second beast that sets up the Sunday Law on their own without the mother.
Yeah, let me voice a thought, and maybe it's wrong, but I just want to voice it because I'm thinking it through in my head, that because remember that Trump's been talking about and being talked to about running for president for a long time. And how many times did we find that he has changed his party affiliation? He changes his party affiliation, which whichever one will give him the platform to be king.
Oh, okay. I think I know where you're going with this.
Oh, well, that's just something that's been going through my head the last couple of days.
Wait, what? I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember.
That Trump chose whatever party would give him his platform and throne to be king. So we see that the Catholic Church is going to be this liberation theology that's going to be about equality, that's going to counterfeit the truth, right? So because the question was, does Trump still continue on like we've always believed he does? But if it's going to be liberalism and equality that's going to keep him on the throne, would he not continue to go with the direction that keeps him in power?
Right.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
So watching that study was really, really good, because she points out how it took Satan, maybe some of you guys have already seen it, took Satan 500 years to be able to counterfeit paganism.
Is that in the recent study?
Yeah.
Oh,
And 100 years to counterfeit papalism. I think that's the way she lays it out. But you can watch that and you can track it and see that as he was always running behind, now there's this back and forth to being almost equal in
Mhm.
step with us.
Yeah. I got that.
And so when we get to the Sunday law, they're finally perfectly in step.
I was thinking with the Pope, how he didn't, or however you say it, he didn't allow the priests to get married, right? He made the decision
Right.
not to. And, like, I guess that's because it's going to cause a shaking in the Catholic Church, and they're not ready for it yet. So it kind of gives you an idea that we just, we had, I guess if you compare those two, we had our shaking within the priests last year, and they're just behind us because they're still not going all the way through. It's almost like when Parminder didn't, I don't know if I'm applying it right, but when Parminder didn't, he didn't really address I don't know if it was the time issue, like the 25-20, or sorry, the time setting. Like he didn't address it. He let it go through because if he did it at that time, it would have been the wrong time for the shaking and the movement. I don't know
Yeah.
if that
And then
makes
the interesting thing is God could put it all in place, and we've watched that. We've seen how fast he's put Donald Trump in the position he's in.
Sister Elaine, what presentation of Tessa's were you referring to?
It's called The First Angel of the Counterfeit.
Okay, thank you.
And it's comparing and contrasting Francis and, Parminder and Jeff and Francis and Benedict. And,
Okay, thank you.
and showing the transition from 1 to 2 and that. So it's showing a whole lot, but that was, so a reminder.
But-
What?
At Panium, Rome helps the King of the South. So Pope Francis is going to help Putin at Panium, but it's not going to work out.
Wait, say that again. Sorry.
So Pope Francis and Putin are friends, because at Panium, in the verse of the Battle of Panium, you had Rome helping the 5-year-old king through its generals. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
They still lost the battle, but Rome was helping them. And in Diadochi War 3, you see that the King of the South and Seleucus, the papacy, are friends. And in real life, you see Pope Francis and Putin are friends. So at Panium, from both of these lines, there's 2 witnesses now, because that war also matches where it would be Pope Francis and King of the South on the same side.
But it, Panium is
There's
wound, right? How does that
For the King of the South. It's not the wound for the King of the North. The
Right.
King of the North is
No,
just
yeah,
trying
that's
to,
what I meant.
yeah.
It's the wound but he helped, but the King of the North helps him at his wound.
The papacy one tries to help him in that battle, but it doesn't work. He still gets
wounded.
He still gets wounded, but not the papacy. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I knew it wasn't the papacy.
Papacy is such a traitor. It's like Cleopatra, just writing on different.
So a reminder, in his history, what city was Ptolemy attacking in this time period? He was attacking Sidon, and in Acts 27, Sidon represented the United States. So, and I'd have to go back to that study to even refresh my mind. So if anybody has comment, they can feel free. But I do remember Sidon being in there, but I didn't remember it being singled out as the United States, but yeah, when the ship is, so Sidon was part of the United States is probably why, because it's that journey, right? Is that why she's marking that there? So Ptolemy's attacking Sidon in the time period here that we're looking at. So we can, even in that history, see that Ptolemy is not idle. This is at the Battle of Ipsus, I believe. Is that the Battle of Ipsus we're looking at? So we can see that Ptolemy is not idle. He was doing a work, and this conflict at Ipsus between Antigonus and the allies sparked a disagreement between Seleucus and Ptolemy over Coal Syria. So the concept we need to consider in this history of the Syrian wars is there are 6 of them. Does Seleucus want Egypt? Is that what he's trying to get? Seleucus is not trying to take Egypt, and Ptolemy is not trying to take Babylon. What both kings wanted was Coal Syria, It's this portion in the middle that came under either one of their spheres of influence, and this is a recurring theme. So neither one of them want each other's country, Babylon or Egypt. What they want is Coal Syria because of its strategic importance.
That's really interesting because if you realize Pope Francis and the King of the South are both vying for the same Eastern European influence. Because Putin is there with his type of religion, and Pope is like, no, I've always been wanting, since the fall of communism, I've been wanting these people to be Catholic. So it's still King of the North and King of the South, kind of in a weird way, fighting for influence. It's interesting. Anyway, sorry.
It's a lot of battles going on at the same time and juggling them in our heads.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, we would have gone to Daniel 11:40 and would have seen that the King of the South was defeated by the King of the North. And remember, for a long time, we thought the King of the South was done away with, but it only went up to the neck because the country itself was not taken. And we would have said that that meant the King of the South was not properly defeated. But I just want to note at what point in the Syrian wars of the fourth ends at Raphia, the fifth ends at Panium, and at either Raphia or Panium do either party take the country of their enemy. They never do. Even at Panium, the King of the North does not take Egypt. Seleucus never took Egypt. So if we use the concept of up to the neck and we are consistent with that, we don't find any evidence that Seleucus ever took Egypt, that country is not taken, because that's not what they're fighting over. What they're fighting over is Coal Syria, and that's what both sides wanted, these spheres of influence. So back to our map, and I did update it a little bit and enlarge my Coal Syria, but I think it's probably still too big, but closer, because you have Israel down in here too. So, but this is what they want. And we're going to see, because we're going to do a little bit of review on the Syrian war conflict as well, and why this area is always been strategic and why it's strategic today. So when we come to World War II, the conflict in 1940 was over spheres of influence. When we come to the Cold War, what are the King of the North and the King of the South fighting over? Spheres of influence over Eastern Europe. We want to talk a little about spheres of influence before we start to discuss our second battle of Heraclea. So before we discuss Heraclea, we want to go through the civil war in Syria and to consider one thing. What's happening right now is fairly well known, that Syria is in a civil war and has become a proxy war between the United States and Russia. We understand that Afghanistan was a 10-year proxy war from 1979 to 1989, and we see now with Syria in a proxy war. So this was from the previous study from the Brazil classes, just to go through proxy war and what it is: war instigated by a major power which does not itself become involved. The end of the Cold War brought the end to many of the proxy wars was through, the end of the Cold War brought an end to many of the proxy wars through which the two sides struggled to exert their influence. So you've got this proxy war between Christ and Satan. They've got different ideology. You have this great controversy come out of that. You've got Abel who forms a church. You've got Cain that forms a church. Cain's church that he forms is Babylon. So, and this is a proxy war using people and nations as it continues, because you have the Afghanistan war, 79 to 89, where the U.S. was supporting the rebels and the Soviet Union was supporting the government of Afghanistan. 40 years later, you have Afghanistan still getting destroyed. The U.S. Is supporting the government now, and Russia supporting the rebels. It isn't over because political players propping up their side, sending more arms and money. So it could have ended, but you've got these other political players that are propping up either side, keeping this battle going. Russia has pipelines into Europe, and others do not. And ships are used and needed and are much more costly. 2009, Qatar and US want to build pipelines, so that's what we're going to kind of look at. So where Russia has these pipelines into Europe, because if everybody remembers, it was Obama that said, I believe it was in 2009, where he makes the speech that we need to find ways to make Europe less dependent on Russia. So in 2009, Qatar had supplies or access to natural gas, and Russia supplies about 1/4 of Europe's natural gas and uses this for political leverage. So when Russia has conflict with Europe, it has a tendency to use the gas to manipulate them, particularly when we consider Ukraine and Georgia, where they had conflict with Ukraine. They waited until December, which is winter in Eastern Europe, and they turned off the gas supply, leaving many people in Ukraine without the ability to heat their homes. So they tend to use this export for political leverage, which is why USA politicians have known for a long time that they need to bypass Russia. It will decrease Russia's political power so that other countries do not depend on their resources. And Obama spoke publicly, she says it's 2014, about it in 2014. He said they needed to find another way to get natural gas into Europe that bypassed Russia. So it was 2014, not 2009. So in 2009, Qatar comes up with a plan. Russia has pipelines into Europe, whereas other nations have to put it on tankers and send it in. And that's much more costly and less effective. So what they need are pipelines. So Qatar comes up with a plan that they're going to take their supplies of natural gas and build a pipeline. This pipeline will go through Saudi Arabia, through Syria, through Turkey, and into Europe. And if I get something wrong in here, correct me, because I was trying to fact check and cross-reference the two different presentations, because she gives the allies different. She lists the allies different for each side on between Brazil and Guadeloupe. And I believe the allies are all right, but I was having a hard time trying to figure out how to write it into here. So by supplying Europe with natural gas from the Persian Gulf, they're going to be able to bypass much of the Russian market. But what's their problem? And what's the issue with this picture? The problem is, whether it's obvious or not, much of the world now is divided into two spheres of influence, the exact same way it was divided in the Cold War. Except now it's not as neat. Now it's spread out all over the globe, where it was just Eastern Europe, East and Western Europe, but now it's all over the globe. And if you were to talk about the USA and Russia, there's a problem. Who is Qatar allied to? Whose sphere of influence does Qatar come under? Under the US. And they have one of the largest we do have one of the largest American military bases in Qatar, the largest base in the Middle East. Qatar is an ally of the United States. And when they want to bypass Russia in the gas market, they need to build a pipeline. Saudi Arabia is an ally of the United States, though they pretend to play both sides. Turkey is an ally. There's no problem with Turkey and Saudi Arabia, but there is a problem with Syria. So when Qatar puts forward this proposal and asks permission of these countries to build this gas pipeline, Saudi Arabia and Turkey agree. And what does Syria say? Syria says no. They won't permit it because they have a boss in Moscow who doesn't want a USA ally supplying natural gas into Europe, because it's going to be a threat to his control over Europe. And Syria's President Assad rejects this proposal. So here's the Qatar Turkey pipeline. Was a proposal to build a natural gas pipeline from the Iranian Qatari South Pars North Dome gas towards Turkey, where it could connect with the Nabucco pipeline to supply European customers as well as Turkey. One route to Turkey was via Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Syria, and another was Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Iraq. Syria's rationale for rejecting the Qatar proposal was said to be to protect the interests of its Russian ally, which is Europe's top supplier of natural gas. That was off of Wikipedia. So here's a little bit of a map. In 2009, they make the proposal, Qatar makes the proposal, and this was their proposal to build this pipeline that would take them straight up through, they'd go up through Kuwait, Iraq, through Syria, and into Turkey. And Syria says no, because Iran is back, I'm sorry, because Syria is Russia is an ally of Syria, or back, vice versa. I think I said that wrong. So, but they're allies. And Syria doesn't want to interfere with Russia. but to be able to do this, it would, go ahead.
You're just echoing.
Okay. So to be able to do this would lessen the dependence on Russia, which would lessen Russia's power. Which I think is interesting too. This is kind of a different note, a side note, but when we're thinking what's going to happen with Russia, what does their loss look like? But I think it's interesting what's pointed out in World War I, how Russia did not have the means to support their allies. And we've seen that already with reports saying that, you know, after, in the whole period of Rafah, how, and when Syria was then handed over and Afghanistan's handed over, that Putin has so many wins that he doesn't have the finances to support his allies. So I thought that was interesting. So that's got to play a role here. Again, if that's the way it was then that would have to be the way it would be now, I would believe, that Russia's not going to have enough resources to defend its allies. So Syria has Russia's only Navy base, which with direct access to the Mediterranean. And here's Mediterranean here. Qatar has the largest naval base down here in Qatar, the largest naval base in the
But so
area.
that means, because we don't attack Russia directly at Panium, we attack one of its spheres of influence and it can't protect them. So I don't know if it's going to be Iran. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be.
Is that the wound?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if it's going to be the wound and it's going to be such a monumental, it has to be the biggest one that they have, which would be Iran.
And not Syria.
Or
Wait,
Syria? Are they with them?
Syria and Iran are both with Russia.
Yeah, you take Syria because that's where they want to
I
put their.
would say Syria, yeah.
Yeah, because he
I would
took
say
Syria, so he'd have to take Syria back.
I would have
maybe.
to say Syria because that's the one that they've always been fighting for.
Yeah.
To get the oil. And so, whoa, wouldn't that be crazy?
So
if
Russia's
Trump
not gonna
actually
be
gets
able to
Syria,
defend
and
Syria.
That's what Obama wanted. That's crazy.
So we're going to wind up with Syria. Is
Yeah. Well, we don't know.
Under
but
a sphere of
that-
We
influence.
totally just
Yeah.
lost Syria, though. He totally handed Syria over. That would make sense. If he takes Syria and Iran, I don't know, maybe it's both. I don't know. But it's going to be to the point where.
Well, if it's both, then that means that Syria and Iran would have to somehow get along.
No, it's just that they don't have to. But Trump can get them both somehow finagled on his side. I don't know.
Makes
But-
no sense that it would be Syria because if it's all about the pipeline, Iran doesn't really, there's no strategic purpose to go in and try to take a whole country like Iran. It's Iran's pipeline that's going through Syria that is creating the dependence of Europe on Russia. If they can cut that off and then run their own pipeline in, because they don't want to cut that pipeline off and leave Europe with nothing. Otherwise, they do that in Iraq. But if they get Syria and they provide a new line of a new pipeline going into Europe, then that would basically weaken Russia because Russia's dependent on Europe's income for their oil from Iran.
Yeah, could be. I'm seeing why Syria is the big one, but Syria as far as that, but Iran I know causes a lot of damage to the neighboring countries and kind of bullies them around. So
What is ISIS more with? Is ISIS its own thing or is it with Iran?
ISIS is basically gone right now. They're no longer as
they're scattered.
they're scattered.
Yeah, and they're scattered around Syria and Iraq.
I think
Possibly Iran, I'm not
with
sure.
Iran too, the only reason that they're allowed to be a bully is because they have Russia backing them. So if the United States weakens Russia, Russia won't be able to defend Iran either, which would weaken Iran's, I guess, their push in that area.
Mhm.
So you could see it probably would have a dual effect if they take Syria. Like, I don't think the U.S. will go in and try to take Iran. I think they can weaken Iran and they can Syria.
So if it's going to match the deadly wound that happened in communism, you had the Eastern countries first, Poland, right? Push up against Russia and dissolve themselves of their rule. I forget the name of that group that was in there, but in Poland there was a specific group. It's just like there was a specific group in there who were like, all right, we're done with communism, we're done with Russia. And they started, and that caused a domino effect for all the other spheres of influence.
It has to do with John Paul. I can't think of the word you're looking for. I
It's
think
not-
the same thing.
It's not with John Paul.
Okay.
It was with the radios were saying, we're telling them we're with you. We're with the name of that, the poem, the worker people all band together, but they were under a name. I forget what the name is, if someone can Google it. But so that started a domino
It has to
effect.
do with-
Poland was a big one. I don't think it had anything to do with him. So Poland, that went down, and then all the other countries followed in domino fashion. And then internally after that, in Russia, the people of Russia rebelled against
Hold on,
the
Solidarity.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Sister Lana says that there's a lot of echo, which is true. So I'm not sure where the echo is coming from.
It is. There's a lot of echo when you talk. I don't know if it's you guys, but yeah.
It comes and goes, and we don't know why.
I
It's
think
not coming and going. It's
that
constant.
when some of the mics are unmuted, then I think, I don't know, for some reason there's like kind of that echo.
It's not doing it now. So yeah, it always comes and goes every now and then. It doesn't. I don't mean just today. We always deal with it every now and then. Maybe you guys just never notice it, but I do.
Well, yeah, it was
Solidarity.
solidarity.
That had to do with John Paul because that's what he went in there. Wasn't that his movement?
No. It was an independent trade union movement in Poland that developed into a mass campaign of political change and inspired popular opposition to communist regimes across Eastern Europe during the 1980s. But the issue was because they didn't want to go to Catholicism. They weren't going to do that. That's why you had the angry Pope, because no one in
Well, maybe I have it reversed. He was against it, not for it.
I think he was against it because they wanted capitalism. They were sick of this system of oppression, and they're like, we're going to change this system of oppression for the Catholic system of oppression. We want
I just know
capitalism.
that has to do with why John Paul went to Poland.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he went there and gave a big speech because he saw the fall of communism approaching. Probably that's why. Maybe that's why Poland overcame communism, and they're like, oh, let me go in there and swoop in and get the people.
I almost lost my words.
And get the people to come in to Catholicism, but they wouldn't. They wanted capitalism, so he became the angry Pope. But solidarity, that was the big one that started the chain reaction in the spheres of influence in 1989. Well, a little bit before, and around that time, Poland took communism off. The other satellite states or spheres of influence followed. Then within Russia, internally, people saw that whole loss of power, and they started to get disillusioned with their own government, and then they revolted in there. So if we're going to see that happen again, somewhere in the Middle East where the biggest spheres of influence are, that's going to
They're going
fall,
to tumble away from him.
and then it's going to be a domino effect, and then internally the people are going to revolt against their own, and that's how it's going to go, isn't it? Isn't that what history showed us? Isn't that what Tess keeps saying? If you want to know what that one looks like, it's
Right.
going to look like this one.
Right. But it must revolve somewhere along the lines of him not having the ability to support his allies too.
Yeah, because his GDP is so low.
Right.
He acts a big game, but he hasn't got the backing to do it.
Okay. So, and we'll skip the rest of this because we're going to see it as we continue to go forward. This was just, I threw this in there just to give us an idea. This was January 2020, the map, and it's in your slideshow if you want to look at it, but it just shows who's in control of what currently, because it changed a lot significantly after Trump pulled the troops out and things started to change. So jump forward to 2011, there's another country with access to the Persian Gulf and the gas market, and that was Iran. They come forward with a proposal. So remember 2009, Qatar has a proposal. Now 2011, Iran has a proposal. They come forward to take their natural gas through the Persian Gulf, and they're going to build a pipeline through their country of Iran, through Iraq, through Syria, under the Mediterranean Sea, and come out in Eastern Europe around Greece maybe. So this is Iran's proposal. And to build that pipeline, which they proposed in early 2011, they need access to Iraq and Syria. Iraq says yes, and what does Syria say? They say yes. And why? Where does Iran fit in with our spheres of influence? They're allies with Russia. Iran comes under Russia's sphere of influence, and they are going to follow their boss. Russia knows it can control them. Russia also knows that Iran does not have the quantity of natural gas that Qatar has. repeats that again. So Qatar, that's interesting, going on what we just were talking about, just a thought, because Qatar, Iran does not have, let's see, Russia knows that Iran does not have the quantity of natural gas that Qatar has. So Iran doesn't have as much, and Russia knows it. Okay, so Assad, Syria, says yes to Iran and no to Qatar, because he knows where he fits on the spheres of influence map. Russia doesn't mind if Iran supplies Europe with natural gas because Iran is an enemy of the United States. It might be something of significance to know that Qatar has more supplies than Iran does, maybe as we go down, as we see these. So this is just an extra tidbit in here too, detailing out more of this stuff, but down here, the pipeline would be a competitor to the Nabucco pipeline from Azerbaijan. I don't remember.
Azerbaijan.
Thank you. It is also an alternative to Qatar. Turkey pipeline, to the Qatar-Turkey pipeline, which has been proposed by Qatar to run from Qatar to Europe via Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, and Turkey. Syria's rationale for rejecting the Qatar proposal was said to be to protect the interest of its Russian ally, which is Europe's top supplier of natural gas. So you've got the Iran, Iraq, Syria pipeline, and you got the one proposed by Qatar. So this is how politics are playing out, and it's become a worldwide issue that these countries are divided between Russia and the United States. Where does Venezuela fit in this map? Under Russia. And this is where I got, because I was referencing back to the previous study in Brazil, where she had different allies listed here, but for different purposes. But the allies were all consistent.
Sister Adriana, why are you smiling? Sorry. No, but I wanted to ask you a question.
What's up?
No.
Oh,
And it's become a worldwide issue that these countries are divided between Russia and the United States. So where does Venezuela fit in under Russia? So right now, Russia has troops within Venezuela propping up their government. And what about Ukraine? They've been fought over, but they are with the United States. And we know that Trump has done what he's done with Ukraine as well, that's caused problems. So what about Afghanistan? It's now a proxy war again. Now the government is on the side of the United States, and as recent history, Russia has begun to stir up the rebels. We could go through most of the conflicts that have been developing over the recent times and see that the global struggle or fight that is going on is over spheres of influence. And this comes back to the story of Ptolemy and Seleucus, that original battle fighting over Coal Syria, when in the death of Antigonus, Seleucus gets the area of Babylon and also Coal Syria. What did these sides actually want? Because Seleucus didn't need to take Egypt. He wanted Coal Syria. He wanted spheres of influence. The same applied for Ptolemy. He was content with Seleucus having Babylon so long as he didn't have the Middle East region, which was of strategic importance. So when we come to the fall of the Soviet Union, when it's defeated, is when it loses its spheres of influence, just like in the Syrian wars. This is what they're fighting over. So in that war here, that when after the death of Antigonus and Seleucus gets Babylon and Coal Syria, we went through it last week, that Seleucus had not yet gone down to claim Coal Syria, and Egypt, Ptolemy marches up and takes it before he has a chance to take control of it. And that's the beginning of Ptolemy and Seleucus and the battles between the king of the north and king of the south. But they were allies to begin with. And just the map. You've got Seleucus territory, you've got Ptolemy's territory, and then here's Coal Syria again. So what we want to consider is what they're fighting over. And let's remind ourselves of the history of 1989 to 1991. What the King of the South lost was spheres of influence. And as he progressively lost his spheres of influence, the US rose up as the world's only superpower. Which means that when we come to the history of Raphi and Panium, what history is going to be repeated? The King of the South is going to lose spheres of influence, And at the stage, at that stage, the US becomes the world's only superpower. It's a repeat of history. But instead of all being over Eastern Europe, and even when we think of that, it wasn't so simple. No fighting over Cuba and Afghanistan. That was the conflict between the Soviet Union and the United States. It became a battle for South America, not just Eastern Europe. So it's become a worldwide battle over spheres of influence between two world superpowers. But we're finding ourselves, it's crept up on us largely without notice that Russia has regained its political power, and the world is divided again into two spheres of influence. That became the most clear in 2001. Soon after Syria accepted Iran's proposal, it becomes engulfed in a civil war that was not a coincidence. And that civil war has been going on for 8 years because the rebels are so strong. It's because Russia and the USA keep propping up opposing sides. That kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier then, because it's going to come, something's going to cause, bring it to the point where Russia can no longer prop up its ally. And if you go back to World War I, it talks about not being able to help, it was Serbia, right? Not being able to support Serbia, and they were humiliated for not being able, they said that they would not let that happen again. And it's interesting to note too, for those that, again, you guys probably know this long before I do, but you have 1979 to 1989, the Afghanistan war, 10-year war, 10-year proxy war. We know that we're in that same, there's that proxy war now that's taking place. And then the Syrian civil war began at Arab Spring in 2011. And if you take that 10 years later, where does that lead you to? 2021 in Panium. So we've discussed 2016, and this is Ipsos, that conflict over the American election where Demetrius and Pyrrhus, Trump and Putin are on the same side. This is the invasion of Poland, war on the Western Front. August 1940, this is where they have a breakdown in their alliance. So we have this breakdown here in their alliance, and that was Heraclea, and that's what we're going to be looking at. So the pact that Hitler and Stalin had signed, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, had 3 parts to it. The pact itself has 2 parts. There was actually 3, but one was kept secret. There's a 3rd part in another agreement, and we discussed that before. But there was one that was the secret part of it. That was the dividing up of Europe. This is a review, as we discussed it as we went through World War II. So the first part of the pact, this is Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, was non-aggression, where they agree to not attack each other. Stalin agrees to allow Hitler to fight the West without attacking him while he is weak. The second part was dividing up Europe into spheres of influence. The third part is the issue of trade. This is how the Soviet Union supported Hitler's war. So the Soviet Union is going to support Hitler, supply him with materials, and Hitler has to pay. It's interesting too, I want to think about that, where Stalin agrees to allow Hitler to fight the West without attacking him while he is weak, because he's wanting to get his strength so that they both want to eventually fight, if I understand that correctly. They both want to eventually fight. But Stalin wants to get strengthened before they do that, before they have that fight. So the Soviet Union is going to support Hitler, supply him with materials, and Hitler has to pay. The way Hitler was to pay was with German technology. He was to share his knowledge with Stalin as they built stronger battleships, new weapons, and new planes. So it wasn't just money. He was to pay in sharing in this technology. And this is the commercial aspect of their alliance. So non-aggression in spheres of influence, but it will also have a commercial element. And without Stalin's support, Hitler would never have been able to maintain a war. So soon after all this was agreed to, in September 1939, it's agreed to here in September 1939, Hitler begins war on the Western Front. So you've got the beginning of the war on the Western Front, just as we have on our line as well, with the invasion of Poland. Then between September 1939 and August 1940, they continued to trade and divide up Eastern Europe. But their relationship began to become under strain until August 1940, when it completely broke off for 1 month. The Soviet Union stopped sending any deliveries to Germany. They wouldn't fund the war effort. And there were two problems. The elements of the pact that Germany was breaking. Germany was not paying their bills to the Soviet Union for trade. And they also started arguing about the division of Eastern Europe. They began to divide up the Balkans, and they realized they couldn't agree on how that should be done, particularly when it came to Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. So they are fighting over spheres of influence and over the commercial aspects of their pact. So this is what the battle is in August of 1940, which also lines up with Heraclea. We need to remember that this is a history of failure. And that means when they come to August 1940, who's the aggressor in August 1940? In the history of failure, it was the King of the South who initiated the breakdown with the King of the North. And as they met in secret and sorted out their differences, it was Germany that came out the winner, the King of the North. So in the history of failure, the King of the South initiates the conflict and the King of the North wins it. So if we're going to see a history of success based on the lines we drew up, we have to see the King of the North initiate this conflict with the King of the South, and the King of the South has to win. This is what Pyrrhus in World War II teach us to expect, and through our other lines, we have identified it as 2018, the Battle of Heraclea, or August 1940. So we went through that. I don't think I have that chart in here where it talks about the, it has all the lines laid out, but this one just shows the line of failure and the line of success. In the line of failure, you're going to have the King of the South, find my mouse. The King of the South attack the King of the North, and the King of the North wins. In the line of success, you've got the King of the North attacks the King of the South, and the King of the South wins. And this is what our line looks like. This is what Heraclea is, where Trump attacks Putin, and Putin wins. And that's what we witnessed with Heraclea. So for the remainder of our time, we're going to trace the relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. From the 2016 election until the end of 2018, we're going to find for the majority of that time, the alliance remains strong. And this may seem like an insignificant event, but it was a preparation for what came after. Donald Trump signs a new executive order on May 11th, 2017. So this is May. Remember, he was inaugurated in January, elected in November of 2016. So we're in May 2017, and he signs Executive Order 13800. And it's titled Strengthening the Cybersecurity of Networks and Infrastructure. This is only a few months after the 2016 election. Donald Trump became an inaugurated president in 2017. And by May that year, he's already beginning to take steps to protect American cybersecurity. And why would he do that?
Because he knows Russia and what they do.
Yeah, so if he's denying that Russia had interfered with the elections, why would he be doing this? So he has just gone through the 2016 election, and he knows how he won it. It was with the help of Vladimir Putin, and he denies it. The whole Mueller report is about that, and he denied that Russia had anything to do with it. And why does he deny it? Does anybody, I mean, I think there's probably multiple answers maybe, but part of it is pride. And I remember reading that. I think I read it in the warning. But he won't admit to what has happened because it would suggest that he isn't the true winner. And he will have nothing less than accept that he's the true winner. Kind of like with the whole Mitt Romney thing, that he wanted a complete victory with his senators all completely united, and Mitt Romney did not give him that. And I don't know if I posted it or sent it out, I don't remember, but there was a video I came across of Donald Trump in 1998 being interviewed by somebody, it was a BBC, I think it was a BBC interview, and they get into this discussion about revenge, and he's talking about the things that had happened to him in business, and Donald Trump talks about revenge and how he loves to get revenge. And he is very vengeful, and he will go out and get revenge. So we see that clearly in what we're witnessing today, that he will take revenge on anyone that wrongs him and is not completely loyal with him. So one of the ways Putin helped him was by attacking America's cyber network. And in 2016, the agency that Putin set up to do this work was the IRA, the Internet Research Agency. This is a branch of the Russian military that sounds innocent, but it's what Putin uses to interfere worldwide with the cyber networks in various countries. And the IRA, if anybody, I think we all are familiar with it. We've covered it more in a study before, but people's jobs, they that work there, their job, and I don't remember each specification, but they had to post a certain amount of posts between all the social medias, propaganda type stuff, and put it out there, lies, deceit, etc. And so all of that was being put out on social media, and that was really their job.
Can I say what I know a little bit about that?
Yeah.
What they did was they would give them a piece of paper with like a headline or something.
Yes.
And then they would make up stories over it.
Right. Yeah. And then make up memes and such, and then they would put them all out on social media. They were to comment on threads as well, and they all had fake Facebook, fake Twitter accounts, all that stuff, and they were to also to go in and make comments on certain threads, and you know, play the game of pitting people against each other, whether it be sympathy or whatever it would that would wreak havoc. And if I'm understanding correctly, it's the equivalent of what we did in Russia prior to 1989 with Radio America. Is that what it was called? Radio America?
Free
Huh?
Free Radio Europe and Radio and something America.
So that's what we were doing there.
Radio Free Europe and another thing with America in it, yeah.
So that's what we were basically doing there, right? To cause division within, to where people would rise up and stand up against their government. So that's what he's been doing in with the Internet Research Agency. So it is particularly the IRA that he used in 2016. May of 2017, Trump begins to strengthen America's cybersecurity. He needs to make sure that whatever Putin did to interfere in the 2016 election to help get Trump elected doesn't continue to give Putin power over the United States now that he's president. This is just the beginning of that work, as we'll see. So this was 2017. It's not a part of Heraclea. It's just where it's just something being put in place that becomes part of Heraclea later. So we're going to skip a year and come to July 2018 in the summer in Helsinki, where they have their first official meeting between Trump and Putin, and how well did that meeting go. And this should just be a review, and going through this history ourselves makes it easier to see. Trump's language just prior to this meeting, he's attacking all of his allies, and you can see how he is waging war on the West. He attacks NATO, he attacks Canada, he attacks European Union, but when he comes to Helsinki and meets with Putin, he only has praise and adoration. There's a well-known Republican senator, or was, as we know, John McCain. He said this meeting was a tragic mistake, and that there has never been an American president who has abased himself before a dictator to this level. So you can imagine in July 2018, it was clear to all who followed that meeting and the press conference that followed it, that there was a relationship between these two men, and there was some kind of an alliance. So we know in this history, the relationship is strong. So we also know that in that press conference that she references here, that this was the same day, it wasn't a Mueller report, what was it? The same day that the intelligence agency had come out with their report showing that it was proven by our own intelligence agencies that Putin had interfered with the election. And so a reporter, knowing that, asks Trump the question while they're in Helsinki in this press conference. Trump and Putin are side by side, and he asks, you know, with your own intelligence agency now saying this, who are you going to believe? And Trump stood right there and said that Putin was very strong in his denial, and I believe him. And so therefore he believed in front of all the world, he accepted Putin's word over his own intelligence agency. So it became apparent that there was something going on between them, or at least those that would see. And we'll jump a couple of months to September 21st, from July 18 to September 21st. And what Trump did in 2017, the executive order, he now begins to complete that work with the National Cybersecurity Strategy. So that's what happens here on September 21st. He's going to put this into place. This is the new strategy to protect American cyber networks. The last time America had a cybersecurity strategy was 15 years ago. It was in 2003. And when he introduces the NCS, Trump wrote the first pages for the strategy where he makes that comment that we have been discussing. It's in this new NCS where he says the rise of the internet corresponds with the USA as the world's only superpower. And as he's strengthening his cybersecurity, he's reminding them the history of the United States from 1989 to 1991. And he's saying we were dominant then, and that corresponds with our interaction with the internet as it rose up. So this was the National Cyber Strategy of the United States, September 2018. And here's the beginning of some of his statements. The rise of the internet and the growing centrality of cyberspace to all facets of the modern world corresponds with the rise of the United States as the world's lone superpower. For the past quarter of a century, the ingenuity of the American people drove the evolution of cyberspace, and in turn, cyberspace has become fundamental to American wealth creation and innovation. Cyberspace is an inseparable component of America's financial, social, government, and political life. Meanwhile, Americans sometimes took for granted that the supremacy of the United States in the cyber domain would remain unchallenged, and that America's vision for an open, interoperable, reliable, and secure internet would inevitably become a reality. Americans believed the growth of the internet would carry the universal aspirations for free expression and individual liberty around the world. Americans assumed the opportunities to expand communication, commerce, and free exchange of ideas. And we're going to see why I read it all, because it's leading up to the next point that she points out here. Would be self-evident. Large parts of the world have embraced America's vision of a shared and open cyberspace for the mutual benefit of all. Our competitors and adversaries, however, have taken an opposite approach. And keep in mind that he knows that Putin interfered with the elections, but he's denying it before the American people. But yet he wrote this: they benefit from the open internet while constricting and controlling their own people's access to it, and actively undermine the principles of an open internet in international forums. They hide behind notions of sovereignty while recklessly violating the laws of other states by engaging in pernicious economic espionage and malicious cyber activities, causing significant economic disruption and harm to individuals, commercial and non-commercial interests, and governments across the world. They view cyberspace as an arena where the United States' overwhelming military, economic, and political power could be neutralized, and where the United States and its allies and partners are vulnerable. Russia, Iran, North Korea conducted reckless cyber attacks that harmed America, and I didn't go on any further than that. The point is who he is saying is the problem, and who does he name first? So, and then he identifies why he is bringing in this cyber strategy. He says that the United States is being challenged, it's being undermined and attacked by 4 particular enemies. And even in peacetime, and there's only 3 here, but you have to read the whole article. Even in peacetime, remember, in our history, there is no clear division between war and peace. Russia told us that, and now in peacetime, America is finding itself under attack from 4 primary enemies. And what's the first enemy Trump names? He names Russia first, his ally, the one that supported him and helped him to get elected. In July 2018, he's saying Putin never interfered with the election. And now in September, he's telling Putin 2 painful things. The first thing he is reminding Putin of the fall of the Soviet Union, and that would have hurt. And the second, Trump is saying in this report that he recognizes what Russia has been doing. and he is going to put an end to it. And he lists Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. The first that he lists is Russia. And then he describes how NCS is there to protect him against Russia's behavior. But it wasn't just an act of protection. John Bolton, the national security advisor for Trump, who was, we know that he's gone as well now. He was advising Trump on national security, and he gave more details about what this strategy was designed to do. On September 20th, when this strategy was beginning to be revealed, he makes an interesting statement. He says that this strategy is designed what it's designed to do is to allow the United States to no longer just act defensively, but now they can act offensively. So now they won't just protect themselves from foreign attacks. Now they can actually engage in attacks. This proposal wasn't just defense. Now it's also offense, because Obama had much more caution and was much more careful about how the US used the internet offensively. So you've got May 11th, he first signs the executive order, and then July, you have the Helsinki meeting, Trump and Putin in alliance, and then September 21st, he's putting in the national cyber strategy and going to use it offensively. October 28th, when we talk about the midnight cry, the internal message comes out in the School of Prophets in Arkansas, and that was in September and October, and that's when we were seeing an escalation. It corresponds with our external waymarks. John Bolton, so we're getting the midnight cry while this is actually happening at the same time. John Bolton goes to Russia and he meets with Putin, and Putin on camera on YouTube, and you can watch the discussion. Putin looks at John Bolton and he reminds him of this meeting in Helsinki. Putin tells John Bolton, I met President Trump in July this year and our relationship was strong. It was a good meeting. And then Putin says, this is why I am surprised to see the United States take steps that are not substantiated by anything. And I would call them unfriendly. They're not friendly steps. He says we are not responding to your unfriendly steps, but you keep taking them. So John Bolton and Putin meet in this part of their meeting is all filmed. And there's a link there that you can click on if you have the slideshow to watch that actual video. So, and I pulled it up and watched it. He's also obviously speaking with a translator, but he's pointing out in September or October, why is it that Donald Trump is being unfriendly to me? Because back in Helsinki, he was friendly with me. Why is he taking all these unfriendly actions? So already by October, who's coming against who? Who's initiating the conflict? We can see that Trump initiated this by setting up the cyber strategy. We're heading towards the time period of early November, which was the American midterm elections. October 31st, a few days after the meeting with John Bolton and Putin, John Bolton gives us a clue about what is happening. He gives a speech and he says that the United States right now is currently undertaking offensive cyber operations. He's using this strategy, and the United States is now acting offensively to protect the midterm elections. November 6th was those elections. So you've got October 31st, they're taking offensive actions right now. We've understood that this was designed to be able to act offensively. October 28th, Putin makes his comment about these actions not being friendly. Then October 31st, we're actually doing this, using the technology, and that we're taking offensive action at that time. And then November 6th comes the midterm elections. So Trump was prepared to keep Putin from being able to interfere with the elections. In late 2018 was the 100-year anniversary of the end of World War I. To commemorate the end of World War I, many of the world leaders met in France, and both Trump and Putin were to be there, and they had a meeting scheduled on the sidelines, so they were supposed to be able to meet. They had a scheduled meeting. Trump canceled that meeting, and he wasn't willing to meet with Vladimir Putin. And about a week later, on November 16th, Trump completes this work of setting up a cybersecurity plan, and he creates a cybersecurity agency within the Department of Homeland Security, CISA. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. And this is the culmination of what he has been trying to do. So you've got the midterm elections, and then you have this meeting canceled. And now he sets up CISA. Time is it? 1 o'clock? Soon after this, November 25th, there's a conflict where? That's where Russia and Ukraine have their conflict. Ukraine ships sailed into Russian water where they aren't allowed to go without permission. Ukrainian ships always sailed through that water, and the permission given was more of a formality and had never been an issue before. But Russia uses their failure to ask permission as an excuse. They fired and seized those naval vessels. They took those ships and all the crew members, some of whom were injured. And this was such an escalation of tension between Russia and Ukraine that Ukraine started to prepare for hot war. And they declared martial law and postponed their election. So beginning November 25th, on this one date, there's a major conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Early December, there was to be a G20 summit meeting in Buenos Aires. This was to be another meeting. There was to be another meeting between Trump and Putin. And on November 29th, Donald Trump cancels this meeting. He cancels it using Twitter on his way to the G20. And the reason he gives for canceling it is because Russia's behavior against Ukraine, because Russia has not released the ships and the sailors, he will not go meet with Vladimir Putin. He would be willing to meet with him again once Putin releases those ships and makes peace with Ukraine. This took Russia completely by surprise. By the time you get to November 29, you can say this relationship is broken apart. So remember, in World War II, you have that brief breakdown of the relationship, August 1940. So December 19 is one of those days when everything seems to happen at once. Trump made a number of announcements. First, he's removing all the troops from Syria. We discussed Syria. Trump is removing all the troops, no longer has any quarrel with Assad because ISIS has been defeated. So he's giving up Syria. He announces that he is removing half of all the troops from Afghanistan. And what is Syria and Afghanistan? They're proxy wars between Russia and the United States. And he's surrendering them. So Trump, this is back in 2018. We know that he didn't actually follow through yet with that, but he did then later. And he's surrendering them. And another announcement, he's removing sanctions on a Russian oligarch, Oleg Deripaska. Why were there sanctions on Oleg Deripaska? We briefly discussed the oligarchs and how they worked for Vladimir Putin. Remember, if you remember right, the oligarchs came out of when communism fell, that these businessmen scooped up all the government, like your electricity and all that, and they became very wealthy and they became the oligarchs, and Vladimir Putin controls them. So there were sanctions on Oleg Deripaska because Putin used him to interfere in the 2016 elections. So we could go into the history, particularly relating to that election, and trace the role of Oleg Deripaska. If you trace what Russia wants, the financial element that they were trying for in the 2016 election, it's for the removal of sanctions. There's a meeting in Trump Tower. It was over sanctions. There's interaction between Trump's campaign team and members of the Russian government, and they're related to sanctions. Anything you see Putin trying to get in that history, even the language he used in July in Helsinki, what Putin wants is the removal of sanctions. So you have the breakdown of the relationship between Russia and the United States leading to December 19, when Trump completely capitulates and relates to two elements. One is commercial and the other is spheres of influence, repeating the history of World War II. So repeating this history here was spheres of influence in trade and commerce. Early this year, we found out some more details and we filled in some of our gaps. John Bolton said the United States was undertaking an offensive operation to protect the midterm elections. Now we know what that was. And in this history of November 6th, surrounding the midterm elections, the United States launched a cyber attack against the Internet Research Agency. and they completely shut down that Russian agency for the time period surrounding the midterm elections. So these were not empty words. They really did launch a cyber attack against Russia. And then in the history of World War II, they have issues over trade in spheres of influence. They met in secret, sorted out their differences, and their relationship was stronger than before. Earlier this year, we uncovered information that they did meet in Buenos Aires around the time of the G20, but it was kept secret. It was not reported. No notes were kept. No one was allowed to listen in. And I believe that the translator had to turn over her notes, his or her notes as well. So when we consider the history of World War II, we see war on the West and war on the East. Between these two fronts, there's a breakdown in their allegiance relating to the spheres of influence and their commercial agreements. And Germany wasn't paying. When we come into our history, we see a progressive breakdown in their allegiance. Trump has not successfully removed sanctions, which at least members of his campaign team had promised Russia that he would do. They still are arguing over spheres of influence, and the final element of that is Ukraine, November 25th. There's a cyber attack. They meet in secret, and whatever was said at that meeting, this is the result. Trump gave up Syria and Afghanistan and began to remove sanctions. And I put this in here, it was from our last study, but Putin, if I'm understanding correctly, Putin wanted Trump in office because he could get Trump to remove these sanctions. He wanted him because he specifically wanted the sanctions removed. And I don't remember the date on this. Maybe somebody has the date. I had it, I think, in the other study, but it was an article that says that, and the link is down here too, that it's official. Congress has handcuffed Donald Trump on Russia on Wednesday morning. It was not long after he became president, I believe. On Wednesday morning, President Trump grudgingly signed a bill into law that imposes new sanctions on Russia and sharply limits his ability to lift them. Since the bill sailed through Congress with a veto-proof majority, his only options were to sign it or to veto it and then endure the humiliation of seeing Congress, controlled by his own party, override him with ease, as lawmakers in both parties pledged to do. When he signed the bill, he issued a statement calling the law significantly flawed and claiming that it contains unconstitutional provisions in its restrictions on presidential authority. He's been speaking this language all along, of who he is and what he wants. But it's interesting because when you get where you understand that, and go back to that 1998 video that I was referencing, where he takes revenge, he will always take revenge, that you can bet that this too, he does not like to not get his way. And when he doesn't get his way, he will go after and take revenge. Because what he wants ultimately is no restrictions on his presidential authority. I think that makes him a king, right?
Sorry, I'm not there.
A tyrant.
I'm not there.
It's okay. And a reminder, when we consider dates, when we did Donald Trump, when did Donald Trump win the 2016 election? He won on November 9th, 2016. It was November 9th, it was like after midnight when they announced it. But there's two actual elections in the United States. November 9 was the election of the people, but in the United States, we also have the electoral system, and the Electoral College. And that election was December 19, 2016. So with the Battle of Ipsus itself, you have two votes, two dates. You have November 9, and then you had November 9 or December 19. First the people, and then the electoral. And so these two dates, November 9 and December 19 of 2016. When we come to our history, we see Heraclea on December 19, and you should already be aware that Asculum is November 9. So December 19 fits our pattern, and that wasn't known before. So you've got the Ipsus, a November 9 in Ipsus, and a December 19 in Ipsus, and then down here, did I say that right? Oh, this is just showing the whole thing. In Heraclea and Asculum, Heraclea is December 19 and Asculum is November 9. So you've got a chiastic structure here with these two dates. 2016 and then 2019, excuse me. No, 2018. This one's 2018, this one's 2019. And one other detail throughout the history from 2016 to the end of 2018, Donald Trump is being restrained by his generals, powerful, influential generals who become part of his government and prevent him from making decisions like these. One by one, these generals either quit or are being fired until only one remains. And the last of all the generals who was willing to stand up against Trump in this was Jim Mattis. When he saw what Trump had done with Syria and Afghanistan without consulting him, he resigned and wrote a letter to condemn Trump for this. The news reports from this day, the news stations we should be listening to, recognize that this last general that had been restrained, Trump had just been removed from his position. He resigned, and then later, just for effect, Trump fired him. He resigned and he gave his resignation and said, if I remember right, that he would stay for 2 months and find a replacement and get that all set up. But Trump went ahead and fired him on the spot. He likes to fire people. December 19th, 1941 is when Adolf Hitler took control of his army. Imagine when we, what we were talking about earlier with Trump and how he switched parties, party affiliations, until he got latched onto the one that would give him his throne, right? What's this going to do to the conservatives? Because wouldn't Trump then just go ahead and capitulate and go with the liberals to stay on the throne? Just some thoughts. So his conservative base, he'll lose them, right?
What?
Just thinking out loud, I think about Trump and changing his party affiliation, that because he's backed by the conservative right, the far right.
Yeah.
Right? But you're going to have this battle between the two false king of the north. One's going to be the true false king of the north. So you have Babylon, you have the Protestants and the Catholic Church.
But the Third Diadochi War and all that show us that they're both going to be powerful together at the same time.
Together at the same time.
You had Antigonus and Seleucus both
Right.
having empires next to each other.
But one of them.
No.
Okay. So they go all the way through Sunday law together.
That's what that model was showing.
Okay. Well, that would make sense then with so he doesn't change. You don't think he changes to liberal?
No.
To gain more power?
No. Why would he do that?
I don't know. I mean, just because it's the liberal side in the Catholic Church that's going to stand up and be the false counterfeit.
Yeah, but they're trying to be the religious movement.
Yes. So all those conservatives just merge with Francis?
No, I think that what I always understood to be is that both of them are going to come together to destroy us. They're going to put their two differences aside.
Okay.
Wait,
And that's the 10 kings.
what are we talking about?
Because isn't Francis trying to get Europe, that sphere of influence for himself? Like I said, that's what he wanted from communism. When communism fell, Europe is what he wanted.
Right.
He wanted those countries. He's still after those countries. He united with Germany, King of the North, to get those then. He didn't. It was a failure. Now, it's possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
they go, okay, I need to get more through. I'm working on that study because I want to get further onto it because it only leads up to the Sunday law. It doesn't go any further. And probably a reason we don't because we're not there. And we're going to have it as it's got to go into the.
I'm
10
sure we'll
kings.
get more light on it. But
Yeah.
I looked at that battle in literal history where that battle literally happened, and you had the Babylonian War when Seleucus won Babylon. If you look at the map, you have Antigonus, this huge chunk of place, and Seleucus, this huge chunk of place, and they were both, he was in his own land, and he went and did his eastern conquest or whatever, and then you had this guy over here doing his own thing, but they were both big, so. And then Seleucus was doing his thing, and then Antigonus went into fighting the Fourth Diadochi War. And it was at the end of this Fourth Diadochi War where Seleucus finally comes back and swoops in with his elephants.
Right.
Aren't we already kind of knowing that the papacy is gonna come together with the United States? And because
That's why I'm saying, because that's what I thought we always thought originally.
yeah,
We're going back to a little bit of that original understanding, but in correct terms of what we know now of
Yeah.
history. Yeah,
Okay, because
Yeah.
I thought we already know that.
yeah,
So,
that's what I
We
thought
do.
too.
Just looking at more details of it, because when you come to the Sunday law, it's
We
not
had
the
to
United
unlearn a
States.
lot to relearn it correctly.
Right,
um,
exactly. So when you come to the Sunday law, it's not going to be Donald Trump in the United States. It's going to be Donald Trump and the 10 Kings. Right?
Well, yeah, because Donald Trump is the United States.
No, he's over the world.
yeah.
Well,
So
we're-
the 10 kings being the papacy?
No, because the 10 Kings in Revelation 17, they give their power and authority
1 hour.
Oh, yeah.
1 hour to the beast.
Mhm.
And then those 10 kings realize they've been duped,
Mhm.
and they turn on the whore and burn her with fire.
Mm. Mm. Mm, mm, mm.
And the whore's the papacy.
I really hope when it says in Revelation 1 hour, it's symbolic of a short space of time. Man.
I know. It does become interesting when you start to actually see prophecy right before your very eyes. Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
I lost my
This is
place
what
in the
this
notes.
means.
Jim Mattis, okay, fired him. Okay, and then I think we did do all that. So, so Adolf Hitler took control of his army from his generals. He decided that he would dictate the movements of his army and compose the strategy by himself. He released himself from the restraint of all his generals on December 19th, 1941. Donald Trump did the same thing December 19th, 2018. So another parallel there with Hitler being free from all his generals. So this is the history of the breakdown and the rebuilding of that alliance, and it centers around the time period of our internal midnight cry. We can see that it was the king of the north that initiated that conflict, and the king of the south that came out winning. On December 20th, Vladimir Putin holds a 4-hour news conference and praises Donald Trump. He says that Donald Trump made all the right decisions, and it is such a shame that his country is not supporting him. And he blames the Democrats and all the other parties of the United States. He launches into this defense of Donald Trump. So you can see December 19th and definitely December 20th that their alliance is strong. And this is the story of the Battle of Heraclea, the king of the north and the king of the south. So one other thing we're going to cover, and just briefly, that you can also build in Fox News into this, that there's another layer relating to December 19th about the Mexican wall, the wall in Mexico, and then the church and state, union of church and state. On December 19th, we need to look at, it was much significance for us, even though it's not connected with the King of the South. What happened in the weeks leading up to December 19th, a new budget had been drawn up where Donald Trump wanted $5 billion for his border wall. The Democrats were not going to allow that. They offered him about 1.6 billion. So there's a fight over the border wall leading up to December 19th. In early December, Donald Trump says he will be proud to shut down the government unless they give him money for the border wall. Early on the day of December 19th, he indicates that he will not shut down the government, but he will continue to fund the government to operate even if they do not give him money for this border wall. We need to consider what happened when he said that, particularly from Fox News. These are people who helped get him into power. They communicate between him and his base, which for the majority of it is Christian conservative America. They very rarely are criticizing and mostly praise. But the night of December 19th, they begin to criticize him. In fact, they launched an attack. They say through their TV screens that this is a decision that Obama would have made. So in other words, they're comparing Trump to Obama. That his presidency would be a failure, that he's completely betrayed those who voted for him in 2016 and they wouldn't vote for him again. And there's this real attack launched from Fox News. One thing we need to be aware of is the power that the news network has and the interaction happening between them and Donald Trump. There's this growing belief inside America that Trump is a prophetic character. Fox News themselves held a poll. The poll was related to Donald Trump's election and whether or not God placed him in power. They found that 1 in 4 Americans believed that the majority of the evangelical Christians in America, something like 67%, believe that he's been raised up by God to do a work in the country, to bring them back to Christianity. He has a funny way of doing it. These are people that watch Fox News. It's the base that they begin to set up intentionally from 1996 when Fox News began, that they would be a news station for American conservative Protestants. That was their business plan and not the result. They actually designed it that way. So Fox star Sean Hannity is one of Donald Trump's fiercest defenders, and here's how the president became close. Here, how they became close. Sean Hannity was revealed on Monday to be one of the clients of Michael Cohen, the attorney of President Donald Trump. There's an article here that you can click on the link to it, though. I just put a brief highlight in it just for extra to link to Fox News as well and how they work together. But it shows the relationship of Hannity with Donald Trump. And I think that's pretty much the end. I think it was. Yep. So questions or comments?
Those Trump prophecies, man.
Yeah.
Queen Esther, there she goes.
Bring America back to Christianity through profanity.
Through profanity, yeah. It's an interesting way to do it, huh? Mocking, ridicule, firing people, getting rid of anybody that doesn't do what you say and defend you with everything you do that's wrong. Are you guys still there?
Yep.
Good. Everybody's quiet. Well, do we
Yes,
have?
just a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the two weapons that are used are spheres of influence and sanctions by Trump. And the sanctions, especially as we see, involves money. And those are the attacks that Trump can make against Putin with the sanctions, but also the spheres of influence are very important too, because that, you can get it out there very quickly with what's happening when you open your mouth and say what Russia's doing to intimidate them that way too. So, yeah, my thought with this was too, as we mentioned, South America, of course, Venezuela, and the two presidents down there. One is Maduro. I mentioned this last week. We didn't talk too much about it, but it's where the United States now and our government is more in power instead of Russia with their president, because there's two presidents and they're being backed. Maduro is being backed by Russia. They don't have the money to keep him in power. But America, United States, has the money to keep supplying the other guy.
Guaido.
Yeah. And so Russia's influence there they're losing in South America or in Venezuela in that war.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there because we can see it's, the spheres of influence are going to become greater on the United States side than for Russia.
It's interesting when looking at the beginning, and as Adriana was showing, looking at the beginning, 1989 to 1991, what was their loss? And it was loss over those Eastern European nations, and so Russia, Soviet Union lost their spheres of influence. So the same thing is going to happen here, that they lose their spheres of influence. It's got to relate to Syria because that's what the whole battle is over. Is that?
Yeah, that's the big one. That's
Syria area
in the Middle East. Yeah.
And it goes to the very beginning of Ptolemy and Seleucus over their battle over Coal Syria. So the battle is the same, and you've got that. You always have in the revolutions. There's always a 10-year period before. And we studied that in the revolutions. Then you also have the 1979 to 1989, the 10-year proxy war. Now you have the civil war in Syria that began in 2011, and so we know that at Panium, that's where Russia receives its wound. So it'll have to affect Russia losing spheres of influence, and it looks like it would be at least Syria, but you guys are saying Syria and Iran, is that right?
Well, I think we came to the conclusion it was just Syria, but
Just
it could
Syria.
possibly be Iran too, but mostly just Syria. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said, Elaine, that's a 10-year war as we look back in history?
Yeah. There were always a 10-year period. And so in the 10-year period on the reform line of 1979 to 1989, that's where you have Jerry Falwell rising up. You have the, I want to say John, yeah, was it John Paul too? The relationship between Reagan and the Pope taking place. The Afghanistan war was a proxy war. And so you have that same proxy war taking place. So it would be a 10-year war. So we would see then the Syrian war ending. And also what else reveals some of that, and for those of you that joined that week that we were in Cottonwood, because they went through that study, the Uriah Smith, the one by Parmenter where he says Uriah Smith was right, showing that you still had that same 10-year war going on from, I want to say 1831. Yeah, 1831 to 1841. Another the same pattern of a 10-year war and over the same issues. So,
So we come to the end of that 10-year period is coming, isn't it? Right
yeah,
soon?
2021. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
Wow.
you already know that that's Panium. So, and Adriana was saying, maybe I missed it, but you were saying that, and I think I have heard her allude to it about being about 18 months.
Yeah, she said it in the recent ones.
Wait, what about being 18 months?
From December, from
January.
from January, you're saying?
She
Not
was
from November?
she was talking about it in January.
In January.
And she was
Being
talking
about 18
about
months.
Jeff, and she said he's got, I don't know what he was supposed to do or what was happening, I don't remember, but she's like, he's got 18 months, 1.5 years from now, so we'll see what happens. She was talking about something, I remember, till Panium.
Yeah.
And that's what she said.
I think I've heard that kind of mentioned too, but no one's really set a date.
I just don't know what in there and what they're looking at or why they think it is that way. I don't ever remember where they got 2021 from. You did those, didn't you? What?
Yeah, I did, and I'm trying to remember. I know I got
Gianna.
2021. What? Say that again?
About the 2021, you remember, you guys, I had this question, and then somehow it all would quiet down, and then somebody else had this question. Somehow in Bible study group, they actually posted the answer for it, and it was just a simple picture, a still shot of the YouTube, that presentation where Tess shows the 2-year period between the major events. So like from 1989 to 1991, 2 years. So from 1999 to 2001,
Oh, wow, that makes it so simple. Whoa.
There's something else though besides that took you to 2021. Did I understand you correctly? You're just talking about how they were showing it's 2 years in between each? Yeah, there was something else that takes you to 2021 as well. All the 10-year patterns, I think.
2021, the January 20 is inauguration of the president, and what else? And the new inauguration of president. Also, the results of the voting for the Adventist, for the Seventh-day Adventist president, something like that.
And when you take the line of the 144,000, you go to the close of probation, before the second advent, you've got the plagues, and you've got a death decree, and then the day and hour is given. So before when you take that pattern, how she takes that pattern, Boston, Boston, Concord, and Exeter. Right, that you have time, the specific time opened up at Exeter. So just prior to whatever date it is, unless they already know it, but just prior to the date would be opened up. But it's got to be, I would think, linked with the Syrian war, that the Syrian war is going to end in whatever that's going to do. It'll end in the United States will win the battle over Syria. And it must have something to do as well with Putin not being financially able to sustain his ally, to support his ally. And so he's going to lose his sphere of influence to the United States.
Yeah, I see that coming.
Did you mean that, like you're saying, from the day and time will be announced, not to say announced, but will be known. So it's like on a fractal level, we will have on 2021, we will have more clear date announced when to, not to say announced, but be known to us when we go to the, to the Levites. Is it?
Yeah, that the time would be opened up.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, bit by bit, we learned a little bit more, and we want to encourage everybody to pick up. And I was reminded this morning, and I had forgotten, and I'm still probably not even remembering, but Sister Jackie, you taught one class. Is that correct?
No, I haven't.
That's what I thought. Adriana said you did. You say Jackie taught?
No, it must have been someone
I
else.
was trying to remember that, and I don't remember it. But
it was a while back. It was like last year.
She said she didn't.
No, not last year because, hey, I haven't even been in a year yet.
Brand new.
Yeah, I know. I know.
I'm about 9 months, 8 months, going into 9 months.
So you never
swear
taught.
I remember a Friday night.
But well, what we want to ask is if you want to get on the schedule for some of our Wednesday or Friday night studies, if you want to take on one of these presentations that are not already taken and spend some time getting ready and you present it. We'll help you with the technological part of it as much as we can. Do you have a computer or just your iPhone?
No, I have a computer, HP. It's it's just a tablet. It's very slow, and I don't use it a lot. I do off and on, but I'm more on my phone. But how do you would be able to do it with share screen on your end instead of mine?
I'm sorry, Adriana just remembered who she was thinking of. We can help you if you want it. We'll help you as best we can to get started. And that if maybe you want to get it, because we all want to practice. I just want to encourage all of us to get practice in presenting the message. And it's actually in the process. I think Adriana said it earlier. It takes several hours to put together the notes and to be able to do this, to prepare. But it's in that process that it helps seal in these truths more and more and more. So it's encouraged that everyone participate in the teaching for our own good. So I want to put it out there, and I'll email the schedule out again, maybe with today's study when I send it out. Hopefully I get it all sent out tomorrow.
And Jackie, when you're on the phone, if you don't want to present it on your computer, somebody else can share their screen and scroll through while you read it, if that's what you want.
Thank you. Yeah, I missed that question. I apologize. My bad.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds good, at least for the first few times or so, till I get going with be able to use the computer.
Yeah.
It might work for me, yeah.
Wait, Jackie, your tablet, can you hook up a Bluetooth little keyboard to it so you can type?
Yeah, I think I can.
Yeah, I think that'll help.
You have to get that little keyboard though, right?
Yes. Yeah, they have them on Amazon for not that expensive. The one I got is it's nice. I can send you the link to it. It wasn't that much.
Yeah, you might want to do that. So you can send it to my email address if you want to.
Okay.
And then
would work.
And then also Christine she wrote the tutorial how to get the transcribe.
Yeah, there's videos on both our YouTube channels to help learn how to do some of the process.
And we
various
can,
videos for different topics.
someone could just pull that off for you and just send it to you, and then you can work
Yep.
on just adding the punctuation marks and stuff as you go through the video.
Yeah,
And
we
I'll-
can do that. We can do
Yeah.
that with the
And
transcribing
I'll
part.
be honest with me, it takes me more than a few. It takes me a few days, almost a week.
If
to,
you, Jackie, if you want to do it, or anybody else wants to do it, but if Jackie wants to do it because she's limited with the tablet, pick a presentation that's not already taken by somebody else, and let one of us know, because there's several of us that know how to transcribe it. It'll be with 0 punctuation whatsoever, not even breaks in sentences or paragraphs or anything. Then you just go through and watch the video and kind of do your editing as you go along. So you do it to the extent that you can, or to the extent that you can't. We can teach you how to do screenshots of board work, so you can just put pictures of the boards from the videos or what have you, however simple or however complex you want to get. But we can help you with the initial transcribing. You just choose a presentation that you want to do.
Okay, now, yeah, I'd start very gradually
Yeah.
from where I'm at right now. But as far as lessons to choose or studies to choose, is that on the website for
Well, what
Repair to the Breach? Where do you post that?
we kind of left it open. We just kind of discussed it. I don't think it's posted. We left it open to rather than doing what we have been doing, like where we went through all through Australia presentations, we went through all through Alberta and several other presentations. So it's kind of open wide now to Germany, to Uganda, to Sudan, Kenya, to take a topic that you know well enough, you're comfortable with, and work from that. And
Yeah.
we all have pretty good familiarity. I mean, certainly it's best to go in order, but we wind up missing so much. There's so much out there right now that we miss.
Oh, I know it. I know
So
it.
as long as we're all privately keeping up with all these things, then we need to practice in teaching, and it's in that practice and in that putting it together and in that practice that we actually are helping ourselves to better understand and get it solid in our minds.
A lot of times when I pick a topic, I find things that I don't know. And I'm like,
That's
oh, I
a good
really need
idea.
to know this. I better study that. And that's what I present.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
I think I put it out there for the first time around, if it's easier for you to take something you're familiar with. But yes, because that's why I took on World War I, because I don't understand it and I need to. So, but whatever works best for you to get you at least an initial practice.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, there's one study that I watched. It's Tessa's study just this last week. I think it's from Sudan. And it's, I took a few notes on it. It's, well, I don't want to take up time here, but it's one of those studies that where she says, we're going to the world. We're going to the Nephilims. And it looks totally different than what we have thought of before. And that really made an impression on me. So it's kind of the one I would be leaning to maybe do.
There you go.
Because it really touched me, you know, with knowledge and where we are. So yeah, that is the one that I'll just look at my notes here and find out which one that actually is, what number it was. And yeah, it is.
Why no Levites? I think.
Pardon me?
Why no Levites? Could
I
be.
thought that was the Parminder.
Yeah, that's a Parminder one.
Oh,
No, this is Tess. Yeah, I watched quite a few of these just this last week. So I was, yeah, impressed by it.
Let's go ahead and close in prayer, and we'll break for lunch and come back for our afternoon study.
Elaine?
Yeah?
I sent you a text. I picked out 2 for me.
Okay. Adriana's gonna pray.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you so much for the studies we were able to have this morning and for the clarity that's coming into our message upon issues we had questions on. Lord, the Sunday law time period is starting to look more and more clear. Help us to have strength and be brave and to push through anything we can so we can make it to all these time periods and do the work that we have to do.
Lord, we have incredible things that are going to happen before our very eyes coming up here shortly. Prepare us, help us to be ready, and help us to be even stronger in staying in this movement with all our hearts and drawing closer to you. Help us to get through the rest of this day. We have a parable study coming up. Help our minds to be ready to understand that, and bless also the food and help it to strengthen and nourish our bodies and have a good positive effect on our body's composition. Lord, we thank you so much for the blessings that we have right now, the peace time that we have to learn and study your truths and get everything right, and harmonize together so that we're all on the same mindset on all these issues. Help us to continue to come together and draw closer to you. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so we're back at